Although we still have a lot of games that need to be played, a good amount of teams have already been eliminated from playoff contention. I went through every conference, and by my count, there are 37 teams who I think are realistically still alive in the playoff hunt. Today, we're going to go conference by conference and go through each team that's still alive and look at the remaining schedule while talking about their playoff odds. Before we get to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. We're going to be starting with the group of 5 conferences since they only have one spot that's going to be available in the college football playoff. We'll start in the American Conference with Army, Navy, and Tulane. Tulane might be a bit of a wild card considering they are 5-2 on the season, but they are undefeated in conference play, and if things shape out in their favor, they could be the group of 5 representative. When looking at Tulane's remaining schedule, they're going to have to win out, which includes a victory on the road at Navy in the second to last week of the season. They're then going to have to win the American Conference Championship and hope by then they are the highest ranked team. Navy has a much more difficult path considering they got to play number 12 Notre Dame this weekend, but if they're able to win that one, that is going to be quite the resume booster. They then got to play Tulane in a couple weeks, and of course they wrap up their season against Army. Just like with Navy, Army's going to have to play Notre Dame, but this game's going to come later in the year near the end of November. If they're able to win that game against Notre Dame, that's going to be quite the resume booster for them, and it's all going to come down to that game against Navy. Whoever wins that contest is likely going to play Tulane in the American Conference Championship game, and at that point, the winner could very well be playoff bound. The other conference we really need to keep an eye on is the Mountain West, and the two teams that are still alive are UNLV and Boise State. Both teams actually play each other this weekend, so whoever picks up the victory is going to have the tiebreaker for the end of the year. Now, obviously, they're going to have to win the Mountain West Championship game, but considering Boise State or UNLV can knock each other out this week, I think it comes down to whoever wins this weekend's matchup. Whoever wins that game is going to have to win out and obviously win the Mountain West Championship game. It's probably going to come down to whoever's higher ranked between those teams or Army or Navy. Looking at Conference USA, I do think there are two teams that are technically still alive in Liberty and Western Kentucky. Mainly Liberty considering they're 3-0 in conference play and they're 5-0 on the season, but Western Kentucky is also undefeated in conference play and they're 5-2. For both of these programs, it's easy. They got to win out, they got to win their conference championship game, and they got to hope there's a lot of chaos among the other group of 5 teams. The final group of 5 team that I think is still alive is in the Sun Belt, and that's Louisiana. They're 3-0 in conference play, and they're 6-1 on the season. When looking at their schedule, they're not really going to have all that great of a resume, but considering they are 6-1, if they're able to win out, and if they get help from other group of 5 teams, I think there's a small chance Louisiana could be the group of 5 team that sneaks in there. Alright, so those are the group of 5 teams that I think are still alive in the hunt. Let's get to the main Power 4 schools. We're going to start in the ACC, where I have 7 teams that are still alive in the hunt. I have Clemson, Miami, SMU, Pittsburgh, Duke, Syracuse, and Virginia Tech. Now at this point, if you're either undefeated or have only one loss in conference play, I do think you're still alive at reaching your conference's title game. Things in the ACC are going to get really interesting later in the year, mainly because the top 2 teams in Clemson and Miami, they don't play each other at any point, so neither team can knock each other out and have that tiebreaker. SMU, who's currently tied with Miami, they don't play the Hurricanes or Clemson either, but they do play Pittsburgh, who is right below them and is a top 20 team and undefeated on the year. Pittsburgh definitely has the more difficult schedule when looking at it, as they still got to play Syracuse, SMU, and Clemson in the middle of November. The same could be said for Duke, who still has to play SMU and Miami. Meanwhile, for Syracuse, they got to play Pittsburgh this weekend, and they finished their season against the Hurricanes. Finally, you have Virginia Tech, who has to play Syracuse and Clemson in November. If I were to guess, a lot of these teams are probably going to eliminate themselves over the next couple of weeks, but I wouldn't be surprised if by the middle of November, there's still 4 or maybe 5 ACC teams that are still alive in the playoff hunt. Like I said, if you have only one conference loss, I think you're still technically alive to play in your conference championship game. Now for Duke, Syracuse, and Virginia Tech, who already have one loss, they're probably going to have to win out and have a lot of help from the undefeated teams, but I think it's entirely possible. We'll move to the Big 12 next, where I have 6 teams that are still alive. I have BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, and Colorado. Now, as of right now, BYU and Iowa State are in the driver's seat, considering they're both 4-0 in conference play, and the other teams behind them are 3-1 in conference play. But there's still 4 teams that are 3-1, and they're technically 1 game behind first place. Both BYU and Iowa State, the 2 remaining undefeated schools, they don't play each other the rest of the way, so there's a chance they don't even meet up until the Big 12 title game. A key advantage that BYU has is the fact that they already have a win over Kansas State this year, so if for some reason those 2 teams were to tie, the Cougars would have the tiebreaker. Ultimately, this might come down to the final week of the season when Iowa State hosts Kansas State. Whoever wins that game is likely going to be playing in the Big 12 championship. Texas Tech's only conference loss came to Baylor, and it doesn't look like they're going to be in the Big 12 title discussion, so they have remaining matchups against Iowa State and Colorado, 2 teams that are going to be in the hunt that they could get the tiebreaker over. Meanwhile, for Cincinnati, their loss came to Texas Tech, so that's definitely going to hurt, but they have chances against Colorado, Iowa State, and Kansas State. If they're able to win out and secure all of those tiebreakers, that could be massive, and that could put Cincinnati in the Big 12 title game. Colorado's is probably going to be the most difficult, considering their only loss came to Kansas State, and they don't get to play BYU or Iowa State, where they could potentially win those tiebreakers. They have 5 winnable games on the rest of their schedule, but for the Buffaloes, they're probably going to have to win out and get a lot of help from other teams in the Big 12. Moving to the Big 10, I also have 6 teams that are still alive in the hunt. I have Indiana, Oregon, Penn State, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Ohio State. As of right now, Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State are all undefeated in conference play. Before we get to the rest of today's video, I'd like to share with you guys how you can make the college football season more exciting and even win some money. I've partnered with Underdog Fantasy to bring you this amazing deal. If you download the Underdog Fantasy app and use promo code Harris, they'll match your first deposit up to $1,000. That's right, they're giving you up to $1,000 of free money. You can choose your favorite players from every game and decide whether or not they'll go higher or lower than their projections. So to add a little extra excitement to every game and win some money, make sure to use promo code Harris for a 100% deposit match up to $1,000 at Underdog Fantasy. You guys can also sign up using the link in my description as well. When looking at Indiana, the rest of their schedule is really enticing, but they do have a game the second to last week of the season on the road at Ohio State. If they drop that game to the Buckeyes, Ohio State's going to own the tiebreaker in what could determine the second team that plays in the Big 10 title game. But if Indiana wins out, they're definitely going to be playing in the Big 10 title game, and they'll probably secure a spot in the playoff with a win or even with a loss. Oregon's undefeated in conference play, and they already have the tiebreaker over Ohio State. So if the Ducks were to lose at any point the rest of the way, having that tiebreaker over Ohio State would be absolutely massive, especially considering they don't play Indiana or Penn State. Speaking of Penn State, their biggest opportunity is going to come in a couple weeks when they take on Ohio State. Outside of that matchup, Penn State should win every game the rest of the way, so honestly, their chances of reaching the Big 10 title game likely come down to that matchup against the Buckeyes next weekend. I know it's crazy to say, but Illinois is still alive in the playoff hunt. Their loss to Penn State definitely hurts when it comes to the standings, but they have a prime opportunity this weekend on the road to take on number 1 Oregon. If they're able to win that game against the Ducks this weekend, that's going to be quite the tiebreaker to own. But if Illinois loses to Oregon, that's pretty much going to completely wipe out their chances. Don't sleep on the Badgers, who are 3-1 in conference play, with their lone loss coming to USC a couple weeks ago. It's not looking likely for the Badgers, but as of right now, they're still alive. They still have games against Penn State and Oregon. Now, obviously, if they drop either one of those games, their chances are going to be completely shot. But if they're able to win out and they have the tiebreaker over Penn State and over Oregon, it looks like Wisconsin actually is going to be playing for a playoff spot in the Big 10 title game. The final team in the Big 10 that's still alive is Ohio State, who is in the driver's seat the rest of the way. They did lose to Oregon, so they don't have that tiebreaker, but they have chances against the other teams that are near the top of the standings. They play Penn State next weekend, and they play Indiana the second to last week of the year. So essentially, if Ohio State just wins out, they will be playing in the Big 10 title game. But if they lose to either Penn State or Indiana, their chances of playing in the Big 10 title game and reaching the college football playoff are in serious jeopardy. Although they're not in a conference, Notre Dame is still alive. But unlike all these other teams that get an automatic entry if they win their conference, Notre Dame doesn't have that opportunity. They're going to have to win out the rest of the way and hope their resume is good enough to reach the college football playoff. Well, as of right now, their resume is definitely going to help them, considering they already have a win on the road at Texas A&M. Not to mention, they have a top 25 matchup with Navy this weekend and a top 25 matchup with Army near the end of the year. It's all going to come down to how other teams look around Notre Dame, but if they win out, they're going to have a really strong case. We're going to wrap up today's video with the SEC, where I have 9 teams that are still alive in the playoff hunt. We have Texas A&M, LSU, Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, Texas, Vanderbilt, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Texas A&M and LSU are the only 2 remaining undefeated teams in conference play, but that's going to change this weekend considering they play each other. So whoever wins that game is going to be in first place in the SEC. For Texas A&M, their schedule the rest of the way looks pretty easy, but they do close the season hosting Texas. LSU's schedule is more difficult considering they got to play Alabama next weekend, and they also have a top 25 matchup with Vanderbilt in a couple of weeks. After suffering a conference loss to Alabama a couple weeks ago, Georgia's probably going to have to go undefeated the rest of the way. Well, they're going to have plenty of chances to boost their resume as they got to go on the road to play number 18 Ole Miss, and they host number 7 Tennessee. Speaking of Tennessee, they're still alive in the hunt, and they're going to have a prime opportunity in a couple weeks when they go on the road to play number 2 Georgia. Missouri got blown out on the road at Texas A&M a couple weeks ago, but they're still 2-1 in conference play, and they're technically still alive in the hunt. When looking at the remaining schedule, they have a big game on the road at Alabama this weekend, but if they're able to pull off the victory there, I can honestly see them closing their schedule by winning their final 4 games. The only issue for the Tigers is that they're not going to have the tiebreaker over Texas A&M, so they're probably going to have some help along the way. Texas will probably need a lot of help as well, considering their SEC conference slate isn't looking all that great right now. They lost to Georgia this weekend, so they lost the tiebreaker there, but they do finish their season on the road at Texas A&M, so a victory there could be a massive tiebreaker for the Longhorns. Who would have thought that Vanderbilt would still be in the hunt considering they started the season 2-2, but they are 2-1 in conference play, and they do have a massive victory over Alabama. Now they do still have Texas, LSU, and Tennessee on their schedule, so we'll wait and see how things shape out for the Commodores, but hey, as of right now near the end of October, Vanderbilt is still alive in the playoff discussion. Alabama is still technically alive, but they're going to have a lot go their way. They're currently 2-2 in conference play, so as of right now, there are 7 teams that are ahead of them in the SEC, but the next couple of weeks can really boost their chances as they play Missouri and LSU. Alabama's definitely going to have to win out, and there's probably going to have to be a lot of chaos for them to even reach the SEC title game, but because Alabama's already ranked as high as they are, and they already have a pretty big win on their resume with Georgia, that could be enough to get them into the playoff if they're able to win out the rest of the way in dominating fashion. The final team we're going to be talking about is Ole Miss, who is currently 1-2 in conference play, but they are 5-2 on the season. Ole Miss doesn't have that good of a resume, but they're going to have an opportunity in a couple weeks to take on number 2 Georgia. If they're able to take down the Bulldogs, that could be one of the biggest wins in all of college football this year, and that could really boost their chances. The way things are currently standing right now, I don't think they really have an opportunity to reach the SEC title game, so they're going to have to win out and hope for a lot of chaos and hope that they can slide in to be that 10th or 11th team in the final playoff rankings. Well, that wraps it up for today's video. Those are the 37 teams who I think are still alive in the college football playoff discussion. Was there a team that I included in those 37 that you think doesn't have a realistic shot at reaching it at all? Or was there a team that wasn't included in those 37 that you think is still alive in the playoff hunt? Whoever it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos all season long, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video and my channel with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.